Chapter 21 Pleasing Kiana, our Point 18, Chapter Preview, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Now how may I help you? Kai asked Kiana in a gentleman's tone. Oh, I was just heard about your services from those disciples. And I must say, every one of them was looking unsatisfied even after being satisfied. So, I am here to personally check your services. Kiana said with a smile as though she didn't believe the disciples. In fact, she had seen Nezuko and her group leaving with dropping faces, so she had asked them about it. They had told her about their session with Kai, and Kiana was taken aback by the way the girls talked about Kai's skills. She didn't believe that someone could do this with 5 minutes of simple massaging and not even touching the most sensitive parts. But unknown to her, she was about to have her best time with Kai. Things will escalate. Kai warned her as he let her inside and led her to his bedroom. Kiana sniffed the room as it was full of the fragrance of the yin chi released by 8 different women. Don't worry. I don't think you can do that to me, who has experienced the techniques of many men. Kiana said proudly as she believed that he wouldn't be able to please her enough that things would escalate. She had in fact, cultivated with many different sect elders and even with the sect's previous genius, Wu Tan, who Kai had killed. Kiana undid her robes and stood proudly in her emerald bra and panty. Most women would be embarrassed by this, but Kiana was proud of herself for having such a flawless body. Kai admired this with a lustless expression, which dumbfounded Kiana. Most men would be staring at her with their tongues out like a snake after its prey. But here Kai was looking at her as if he had just picked up some grocery from a shopping store and found out the quality was quite fresh. He gently pushed Kiana on his bed and slowly started rubbing her back. Kiana immediately felt a warm feeling surge through her body wherever his hands made contact with her skin. Now she realized Kai's true skill and regretted that she said all those lies before. But if she knew that he was doing this at the lowest level possible for him, she would definitely dig a hole and bury herself in it for insulting him. His hands slowly reached for her breasts and he felt the erect tips behind her bra, waiting for their release. He gently traced them as Kiana purred. His right hand reached behind Kiana and unhooked her bra in a quick moment. Her bra fell off and the 2 giant mountains were unleashed. He stared as they bounced around and immediately went if to suck at them. His tongue licked her nipples in a circular motion before he grabbed it between his teeth and sucked on it. Kiana had been trying hard not to moan, but when Kai started sucking her breasts, she finally relished a moan. He continued to suck on both of her nipples for some time and he sometimes teasingly pinched them between his teeth. Kiana moaned and he released her breasts from his grip. Kiana started to pant but he didn't give her much time for rest. He went in for a kiss and Kiana's mouth opened under Kai's sudden assault. His tongue entered her mouth like it was a lion chasing its prey and started wrestling with her own tongue. Kai's other hand traveled down her stomach and tugged her underwear. Kiana was completely naked and he broke off their kiss to stare at her perfect glowing skin. It's not fair that I am the only one who is naked. Kiana said and pouted at Kai, who just chuckled lightly. He pulled off his jacket and shirt. He undid his belt and let his jeans drop down on the floor. He slipped out of his underwear and he was now completely naked. His rod was still sleeping like a dragon who needed awakening. Oh, allow me. Kiana said and extended her hands towards Kai's rod and slowly started rubbing it. His rod slowly started hardening and started rising like a dragon who was woken up. Kiana slowly put the head of Kai's rod inside her mouth and licked it with her hot tongue, this sending waves of electric shock throughout Kai's body. His dragon was now completely awoke and was staring at the heavens in his glory. Kiana put every inch of it inside her mouth in a quick motion and deep-throated Kai. Her mouth stuck around to his dick as she moved back and forth on it. She released it from her mouth after a minute and Kai's rod was drenched in saliva. Kai pushed his body over Kiana's and his mouth went near her pink flower. He then slowly injected his tongue into her cave and started licking it with passion. Kiana released powerful moans which made Kai extend his tongue even further. I also want to pleasure you," Kiana said, and they switched their positions. Now Kiana's giant ass was lying on top of Kai's face and her face was near his dick. This position was known as the 69 position. Kiana lowered her body and Kai's tongue penetrated her caves. Simultaneously, she started sucking on Kai's rod. His tongue explored Kiana's cave freely and even teased her clit. But Kiana didn't have time to moan as her mouth was full of Kai's dick. However, Kai started sucking on her clit and her body twitched as she released a huge amount of hot chi directly into Kai's mouth. He swallowed every single drop of it before licking his lips clean of it. "Now it's only fair if you get to taste mine," Kai said and ejaculated a mouthful of yang chi into Kiana's mouth. But much to her horror and awe, he released another 2 loads of it and yang chi started dripping from Kiana's mouth. She sat up and gulped it down her throat. "It's quite sweet, which is impossible," Kiana said and used a finger to make a trail of the yang chi still present in her mouth. In reality, only gods felt the taste of their desire in Kai's yang chi. Anyone below it felt that it tasted like honey or anything sweet. "You released such a large amount and sadly, we won't be able to cultivate," Kiana said in a sad tone. Even though Kai was a heaven-defying genius, he was still an inner court disciple and Kiana was an elder. Even though no one will say anything to her face, and that was because of Kai. Many rumors will be spread behind her back. But if Kiana knew that the sect masters had decided to promote Kai to a core disciple, she would have wished that she never said what she said. Kai's pride was hurt since he could take on every single woman on the entire planet without being exhausted, but he still had a neutral expression. "Oh, don't worry about that. We can still cultivate. In fact, you would be the one to bail as you cannot unharden me," Kai said in a voice that was devoid of any feelings. Kiana stared at Kai's dick in horror as it was still very much hard. In fact, it looked like it was longer than before. Kiana gulped at the thought of what was about to come. Suddenly, Kai gave her an evil smile which did not help her chaotic feelings. She still though that as a sect elder, she couldn't surrender herself to a mere inner court disciple. But only if she knew who Kai truly was. Chapter 22 You Can't Even Stand Up and You Challenged Me. R.18, Chapter Preview, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 22 You Can't Even Stand Up and You Challenged Me. R.18, Chapter Preview, By the end of our session, you wouldn't even be able to stand up, Kiana said in a challenging voice which pretty much doomed her. Kai just gave her an evil smile and pushed her down on the bed. He slowly teased her clit with the tip of his dick. After that, he slowly thrusted its head inside Kiana's cave and started reaching further inside. It took some time before Kai's entire dick was inside Kiana's caves and he admired the scene for a few minutes. "I will now start moving," Kai warned Kiana and slowly thrusted his hips. Kiana released a low moan as he slowly started moving. He made swift motions and hit a few good spots. He then slowly started increasing his speed and the room thundered with the sound of flesh hitting against flesh. His dick completely ravaged her insides as he pounded her. Kiana moaned uncontrollably as he continued to pound her. Kai then suddenly grabbed her breasts and started fondling them with care while continuing to pound her. It's coming out," Kiana screamed and her body started twitching as chi started flowing from her cave. But that didn't stop Kai as he continued to pound her with the same force. Now a large amount of chi and covered Kai's rod and it didn't stop. "Well, that is your limit," he suddenly said and released a large amount of yang chi inside her. "You still have that much yang chi inside you?" Kiana said in astonishment and horror. She opened her mouth to say something but no sound came out and her jaw was left hanging open. The reason for this was that Kai's rod was still hard and straight. Kiana's body trembled in fear and much to her horror, he gave her another evil smile. You challenged me, kiddo. Now cultivate that yang qi and you will recover enough to cultivate with me once again. Kai ordered and he too started cultivating the yin qi. Since Kiana had no way to get out of this situation, since running was impossible because of his mastery in formations, Kiana sighed and started cultivating. An hour later, Kiana's jaw was hanging loose. She had managed to make multiple breakthroughs. Kiana was originally at the 5th stage of the Sky Spirit Realm and she had made a huge jump to the 10th stage. She looked at Kai who was in deep cultivation and saw that his dick was still hard during this. How can he cultivate like this? From what I know, hard dicks means excitement, and doesn't cultivation require a calm mind? Kiana pondered but decided to not ask this since she was afraid of the answer. She got near Kai's rod and slowly started licking it from the bottom, where it connected to the rest of the body, to the tip of its head. For some reason, Kai suddenly felt electric shock pass through his body and he felt that something wet was touching his dick. He chuckled on the inside as he figured out that Kiana was licking his dick. He focused on his cultivation so that he could return to their session. Back to Kiana's end. She had now completely swallowed Kai's dick and was sucking on it as her mouth narrowed around it. One of her hands was fondling her breasts whereas the other one was playing with her slit. She was pleasuring both herself and him at the same time. Kai's eyes suddenly opened and he chuckled at the scene below. Just like he had thought, Kiana was pleasing him. Since I made you wait for this much time, you can do what you want. Kai said and fell back on the bed. Kiana slowly interpreted the meaning behind those words and she slowly started moving towards Kai's rod. She lifted herself and hovered over Kai's rod. She slowly started lowering her body as she started swallowing Kai's body. Oh, she moaned in pleasure as she completely swallowed Kai's rod. She then slowly started moving and Kai grabbed her waist to keep her steady. Kiana started ridding Kai's dick in cowboy style and moaned in pleasure. Yin Qi continued to flow from her cave and soaked Kai's dick. Her breasts flayed wildly in the air and her huge ass would land on his body with a thump when she rode on his cock. And just like he had said, he let Kiana do whatever she wanted and he didn't lay a hand on her. Unexpectedly, Kiana slowly said between ridding Kai. Fondle my breasts and pleasure me. She screamed. He did as she wished and grabbed her breasts. He started rubbing and kneading them. Sometimes, he would teasingly pinch the nipples and Kiana would release a loud moan. This somehow continued for 20 minutes before Kiana finally reached her limit. Any more cultivation would hurt her body so Kai flipped her down on the bed and released his yang qi inside her. Kiana breathed a sigh of relief and tried to sit up but was unable to do so. Her session with Kai had taken too much toll on her body. She somehow managed to cultivate Kai's yang qi by staying in a sleeping position. She made 2 more breakthroughs and was now at the 2nd stage of the Hell Spirit Realm. She was now able to sit up but as soon as she tried to stand up, her legs gave up and she was about to hit the floor. Luckily, Kai quickly picked her up in princess style before she could hit the floor and put her on the bed. You can't even stand up and you challenged me. He said in a mocking tone but Kiana didn't mind it. In fact, she deserved it as she thought that she could beat someone like Kai. Too much pride really is a sin. Kai was getting tired of staying at his house and he somehow had a feeling that someone would soon knock at his door. He quickly picked up Kiana. Think about where you live. Kai instructed her as he used his light steps to drop her off at her house. So now I need to concoct those pills but I don't feel safe doing it here since many more troubles might come my way. He thought about what he should do and suddenly an idea came to his mind. The most effective way to stay out of the sect without raising any suspiciousness is to take a mission. He said and started making his way towards the mission hall. Chapter 23 Choosing a Mission, Chapter Preview, you are listening at novelfull.audio. The mission hall was a huge hall with different counters according to your cultivation. The missions were divided into different types. Gathering missions which required someone to gather some ingredients, safeguard missions which required you to be a bodyguard, assassination missions where one has to assassinate wanted criminals, and many other missions like domestic help, bandit capture, etc. The last time Kai had shown his cultivation to the sect, he had to wipe their memories. He pondered for a minute and went to the Hell Spirit Realm mission counter. The elder sitting there looked skeptical at Kai's entrance. Nearly everyone in the sect knew about him, the #1 genius who could do anything possible. He simply shrugged at the elder's gaze and released a first-stage Hell Spirit cultivation. The elder just nodded and let Kai look at the available missions. Mission #1 Objective: Kill 10 needle lizards. Reward: 70 sect points/140 spirit stones. Mission #2 Objective: Gather herbs for some alchemy masters. Reward: 40 sect points/80 spirit stones. Mission #3 Objective: Kill a rogue cultivator who stole the wealth of a rich farmer. Reward: 100 sect points/200 spirit stones. There were many missions, but Kai decided to skip the stupid ones, well, the missions that looked stupid to him. Becoming an errand boy for lesser alchemists. Not a chance. He deduced that the sect points were of half the value then spirit stones and sect points could be used for buying items in the exchange center. He searched for a mission that suited him. One of his harem members, Isabella, was a reading and writing maniac. Because of her, Kai had read about many clichés and the mission he chose can be considered as one of the most clichéist mission in the history of cliché missions. The mission was Mission #38 Objective: Kill a group of bandits residing outside Ryazu City who are taking women from the city. Note: the bandits' total number is unknown and their leader is said to be at the 3rd stage of the Hell Spirit Realm. Reward: 200 sect points/400 spirit stones. He didn't know where Ryazu City was, but he just needed to take a look at the map and then he would be able to teleport himself there. He submitted the mission and left the mission hall. He then went to Mia's house and knocked on her door. When Mia didn't answer, for a split second, Kai thought that something might have happened to her. Then he remembered his own formations that he created and opened Mia's doorknob. Kai stepped inside and called Mia's name. "Mia, are you here?" Mia suddenly came rushing from her bedroom and hugged him. He was taken aback by how quickly this escalated. "You are finally here to see me." Mia released and pouted. Kai chuckled lightly and patted her head. "I was busy with too much drama. I am here to tell you that I am going outside and when I will come back, I will have an important thing with me that will help in recovering your memories." At his words, Mia jumped in delight and once again, hugged him. "Promise to cultivate with me when you come back," Mia said in a somewhat pleading voice. He couldn't blame her. Since being a mortal, his techniques were enough to make anyone beg him to cultivate with them. "Yes, it will be my pleasure to do that. I will also teach you some fighting techniques. But for now, ditch the cultivation technique you are practicing and start using this one," he suddenly said and touched Mia's forehead. Mia's eyes rolled back for a minute and her eyes came back to focus after some time. This technique. It's above imperial grade. Mia trembled in fear as she saw the technique. It's precisely a divine grade technique which comes after the imperial grade. Unfortunately, because of your low cultivation, I can't give you anything above that. Kai had the top-notch cultivation techniques for every single one of his harem members and he wanted to give one of them to Mia, but unfortunately, it won't do her any good and it might even destroy her cultivation. Mia's eyes were however shining. She had heard Kai say that he has techniques above the divine grade and he would have given them to her if she could use them. Anyone else would have decided to keep the technique for himself or herself. But here, Kai was sharing such a powerful technique with her for free. She didn't care about the cultivation techniques since Kai's yang qi was enough to increase her cultivation. "But how did you acquire these techniques?" Mia was extremely curious about this and decided to ask him. If you stay with me, then you will experience many new things. He chuckled and disappeared, leaving behind a pouting Mia. BDNV Kai appeared inside his house as he had forgotten to clean it up. In fact, he was considered as a germ freak in the upper realms, which was somewhat ironical as dual cultivating was anything but clean. He snapped his fingers and the sheets got cleaned and the room was full of a vanilla-like fragrance. He suddenly picked up something wet from the ground. It was Nezuko's wet underwear and het juices were dripping from it. Did she leave without wearing one? Kai wondered out loud. He snapped his fingers and the underwear dried and he put it in his pendant to give it back to her a week later. Kai gave the room a thorough glance and once again vanished. Kai appeared at the entrance of Ryazu City. He entered the city and made his way towards the city hall. He reached the city hall after a few minutes and showed the mission paper to the guy at the registration desk. You should only take this mission if you are sure of your abilities. The guy unexpectedly warned Kai. It turned out that many cultivators had tried to capture the bandits and had always been killed. But those were the male cultivators, the female cultivators' cultivation was crippled and they were caught as slaves. Kai just nodded and stepped out of the city hall. He decided that he would capture the bandits on the next day or after it since the mission didn't have a time limit. He was now about to live the day as a mortal. But unfortunately, that can't happen. Chapter 24 A Normal Day, Chapter Preview, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Kai calmly strolled through the city and entered a restaurant. The receptionist, as usual, stared at Kai's otherworldly clothes. He just sighed and threw a pouch to the receptionist. That pouch contains 5,000 spirit stones. I want the best meal you have here and also a table with the best view available. Kai said without much regard to those spirit stones. The receptionist trembled after hearing his words. Someone throwing a whooping 5,000 spirit stones without much regard must be a royal or something. Yes, Your Majesty. The receptionist gave a little bow as he didn't want to angry Kai and ring the bell at his desk. A minute later, a waiter appeared and guided Kai towards his seat. The restaurant had 5 floors. The first and second for normal guests, the third was for reserved people, the fourth for VIPs, and the fifth for high-ranking nobles. While climbing up the stairs, almost everyone present in the restaurant gazed at Kai with dumbfounded eyes. After reaching the 5th floor, he was given a table near the window and he could gaze at the entire city. The 5th floor was empty. Only he was sitting there. A few minutes later, a waiter brought along his dish. It was an elegant steak with a delicious aroma. Now very few people knew about this, but secretly, Kai was a huge foodie. However, he had to refrain himself from telling this to certain members of his harem as their cooking skills were as good as an ant's mountain pushing skill, and an ant's mountain pushing skill is really bad. In other words, their cooking was enough to make you vomit real blood and you might even die if you were not lucky, but then there were some members who were experts in cooking. Mia was one of them as she had the ability to create the world's most delicious ice creams. Well, she had rarely shared them, but when she had, Kai had loved to eat them. Who knows, maybe she could create an ice cream for him after he restored her memories. But he would have to wait for that. Kai delicately ate the steak, which was followed by a chocolate parfait made with 5 different types of chocolates. After eating everything, he went back to the reception and gave the receptionist a huge tip. That pouch contains about 15,000 spirit stones. The food was good. Kai remarked and left a trembling receptionist behind. He strolled through the city once again, and this time, he saw a game that was popular looking. He saw a little girl gazing at a huge stuffed white bear while her father was trying to win it for her. Kai went near the stall and asked about the game. It was pretty simple, you have to pop the balloon with any skill but you only get one try. The balloon was however reinforced with negation formations that decreased the effects of a skill. He handed the guy operating the game 50 spirit stones as the fees for playing and looked at one balloon. Kai didn't exert any visible pressure but the balloon popped. He gave another 50 spirit stones to the guy and said, "Don't ask any questions and just give me that huge white bear." The guy obliged and handed Kai a bear about 3 feet taller than him. He went near the little girl and handed her the white bear and disappeared. The father and daughter looked around for him so that they could thank him, but they couldn't find him, and as a result, they gave up. The girl was quite happy though. Kai continued his stroll and thought. So this is what mortals call a normal, peaceful day. I definitely have to say that it is quite good. The only thing missing is that I don't have any of my girls with me. Maybe then I would have called it a date. He was quite happy for this peaceful time, but that's when his peaceful day flipped out. Suddenly, a group of people appeared in the sky and took children from the neck, and flew above again. "These children are our hostages and no one will move or say anything or we will slit their throats," one of them said. Only cultivators at the heaven spirit realm and above could fly, and everyone was frightened of them, everyone except Kai. If only I could experience a normal day. He sighed as he snapped his fingers. The hostages appeared on the ground. The terrorists, as Kai branded them, tried to pick the kids up once again but failed as they hit a barrier. "What the hell is this?" One of them, who had touched the barrier, screamed as his hands started melting. "You chose the wrong moment to attack. I was having such a nice day and you ruined it," Kai said in a cold voice and teleported inside the barrier. He used his spiritual sense to sense their cultivation. Surprisingly, all of them were at the first stage of heaven's spirit realm, but something was wrong with their bodies. Spiritual energy was flowing through them at a dangerous pace. It was as though their cultivation was forcefully increased to the heaven spirit realm. But it was only for a small amount of time, and their bodies would then explode because of the excessive spiritual energy. But that didn't matter to Kai, as he held out his hand and a black ball about the size of a golf ball appeared in his hand. He threw it and it separated into 7 smaller balls, which was the total number of terrorists. The ball ignited into black flames, and when it touched the terrorists' bodies, it started burning. All of them screamed and tried various techniques to put out the flame. Kai snorted as he saw them trying many things. "Don't even bother. Those are the undying soul black flames, a matera, which will burn you to the very core of your soul. Nothing can extinguish it," Kai said. The terrorists' screams of agony echoed in the entire city as they were burned alive. A minute later, only ashes remained and any signs of it being human residue were gone. He just snapped his fingers to deactivate the barrier and disappeared to the library. He had left quite a commotion behind, and the city guards were searching for the unknown powerhouse who helped the city. But you know, Kai, if he doesn't want to be found, well then you might not even know that he exists. He thought that since this day had already moved very much further away from normal, he was now about to ring at the bandits' door to have a talk with them. Author's note. Can I get 50 power stones for 1 extra chapter? Or perhaps a 100 for 2 chapters? Write some reviews and vote for extra chapters. Chapter 25, Getting a Personal Cheerleading Squad, Chapter Preview. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Kai went to the city hall once again to gather information. The hall was full of chaos, and the reason for this was of course him. He simply chose to ignore this and looked for the guy he met before. Kai found him at the same place and asked him about the bandits' hideout. 5 minutes later, Kai appeared in a forest. It turned out that the bandits had a maze-like hideout inside the forest, and that was the reason no one was able to kill them. The hideout was a huge cave that extended in a maze-like structure, and the cultivators who came here would immediately be caught by different traps set up by the bandits. Kai reached the hideout in no time and saw a group of six people standing outside the cave entrance. What was the last time I tortured some guys? Kai pondered but couldn't remember it. He gave an evil smile. The bandits suddenly had a very bad and cold feeling, but they didn't know why they were feeling it. He simply walked towards them, with no weapon out or anything. He even had a smile on his face. Oh, thank God. Hello guys, my name is Kai and I am a rich merchant traveling to Ryazu City. I got lost in the forest and now I am trying to find my way to the city. Can any of you gentlemen please tell me where the city is? Kai asked in an innocent voice. He had always loved role-playing and tricking mortals. Well, the ones who were considered as evil or otherwise, he would receive punishment from the wielder of justice who just happened to be someone he knew. The bandits looked at Kai's clothes and they were overcome by greed. All of them took out their weapons and started running towards Kai. He smiled at them and snapped his fingers. All of them froze on their spots. Only their eyes were blinking and the rest of their body was frozen in time. Enjoy the nightmares, Kai said and touched the foreheads of the bandits. Their eyes rolled back in their heads and all of them fell on the ground, unconscious. He had just trapped them in a nightmare ere 100 naked men were chasing these guys while holding whips in their hands. And if these bandits got captured by them, then everyone here can imagine about what might happen to them. Kai entered the bandits' hideout and started strolling from one room to other, connected by a network of tunnels. He knocked out every bandit he met and trapped them in the same nightmare. He reached one room that looked like a kitchen except that moss was covering the entire room. Kai sighed and snapped his fingers. The entire room was cleaned and the place started shining. He proceeded to move on to the next room and he ran smack into some guys having sex with female slaves. A painful death. Kai's hands lit up with black flames as he torched every man present there alive. The women there lay dead as if Kai's appearance didn't matter. He looked around and saw 35 women with the same dead-looking eyes and an expression that showed that they didn't care about anything. These women have been our *ped and have been used as sex machines for who knows how long. I should first fix their mentality, Kai said to himself and slowly went near the women on the floor. He touched their foreheads and all of them fell asleep. He did the same to every other woman present in the room and all of them fell asleep. Kai's hands started glowing and any signs of abuse in the women's bodies vanished. He took out some clothes from his pendant and dressed the women in them. He then snapped his fingers and all of them woke up. I will now erase your memories of this place and you can all go back to your previous lives, he said and moved towards one of the women. But before he could touch her forehead, the woman swatted aside Kai's hand. Nobody would want us back. We are all disgraces. Some of us are rogue daughters who escaped arranged marriages, some declined them and were dumped here as presents, some were left here by males who wanted to protect themselves from these bandits. Nobody wants us back. One woman said hoarsely as if she hadn't had water for a long time. Cultivators could live without food, water, and sleep for some time. It depended on their cultivation or if they had a skill to block their hunger. Kai was now so angry at the bandits that he wanted to slaughter them in every single way possible. He used his left hand to massage his forehead and snapped the fingers of his right hand. The throats of the women were now normal and they felt a new strength surge through their body. He had just replenished their body with water and food which was invisible. So what do you want to do? He asked them. We will do whatever you want us to do since you rescued us. The women were already used to being slaves so they were ready to become servants for Kai since he might treat them better than the bandits. Little did they know that they had hit the jackpot with him. Well then, you are all going to become my personal cheerleading squad. Kai's words dumbfounded everyone. They were expecting to become slaves but this guy here had asked them to become his cheerleading squad. Now that doesn't happen every day or perhaps never happens. As for why Kai asked them to become his cheerleading squad, he could easily keep them safe and they could continue to live their life without any more abuse. And of course, he had always wanted his own cheerleading squad. We will continue this talk after I kill the rest of the bandits, Kai said and continued his exploration of the hideout. The women sat down in a circle and decided to sleep. After a long time, they might be able to sleep peacefully. Kai was not a hero type of guy and he didn't do things because of the righteousness of his heart. He chose what he wanted to do, whether it was evil or not. But seeing women being treated like that, he was angered. He had always hated people who did such things. He was now about to make the leader of the bandits experience his worst nightmare ever. And by worst nightmare ever, Kai meant himself. The leader of the bandits would be begging Kai to kill him after Kai is done with him, and that was exactly what he wanted. Chapter 26: A torturing session with ad breaks. Chapter preview. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Kai teleported from one room to another until he finally found the leader of the bandits. The leader was bald and his face was the most ugliest face Kai had ever seen. If he had to put him in a genre, then it would ugly bastard. Who are you? The leader shouted as soon as he saw him. Who? Me. I am just a random dude who is going to torture you. Kai said casually as if he was giving his introduction as a homeroom teacher. Asterisk 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 asterisk, come and help me kill this arrogant bastard. The leader shouted. Due to Kai not wanting to hear their names, I had to censor it. Two more ugly-looking guys appeared on either side of the most ugliest guy. Kai slowly moved back, with an expression of horror on his face. Now you know who you are messing with. The leader laughed as he thought that Kai was afraid of him. I already know that I am about to torture a group of ugly dudes who would become even more uglier after I am done. Kai said in a playful voice which was straight evil. He was not afraid of these guys. In fact, nobody here would be able to terrify him. The real reason for his behavior was that all there of them were far more uglier than he had imagined them to be. It's boring to just snap my fingers and then watch you die. What should I do? Kai was bored at such killings and was thinking about some new ways to entertain himself. Suddenly, an idea came to light in his mind and Kai jumped joyfully. I will restrict my cultivation to your level and fight with just one of my skills. That should be enough of a handicap. He said happily. Perhaps his behavior was childish, but what could he do? After reaching semi-divinity, the things one might feel are dimmed. But when someone is in the mortal cultivation realms, their emotions are fully brought. And that was happening to Kai too. The leader of the bandits had a cultivation base at the 4th stage of the Hell Spirit Realm, whereas his two subordinates had the cultivation of the 1st stage of the Hell Spirit Realm and 2nd stage of Hell Spirit Realm respectively. Kai sighed at the cultivation of the leader because it exceeded the cultivation of the sect masters of the Blue Moon sect. After returning back to the sect, he would definitely try to raise their cultivation, Riang's cultivation, not Junjun's cultivation. He then released a 4th stage Hell Spirit Realm aura and took out the same sword he used to kill the sect's supposedly number 1 genius, Wu Tan. The trio was shocked to see that someone as young as Kai had such a high cultivation. If they knew that he was at the 9th stage of the Heaven Spirit Realm and was a formal top-tier immortal, they might as well scratch themselves to death. Wait, was it stab or scratch? Who cares? Kai released his sword aura and the bandits gulped at its pressure. The leader suddenly took out something from thin air. Actually, it was from not thin air. The bandit leader was wearing a storage ring in his hand. As for what was the thing that the leader took out? It was a low-tier Imperial grade weapon, which came after Soul grade. I have a higher weapon and I can easily defeat you with this. The leader said, his voice full of confidence. But little did he know that Kai defied the normal laws of the world and could do absurd things. Kai jumped towards the subordinate on the right and instantly pierced his heart, thus killing him on the spot. Then he disappeared and appeared behind the subordinate on the left and beheaded him. The subordinate's head fell on the ground with a thump and the leader released a terrified scream. I only promised to fight you, not these poor excuses for human meat. But since you guys are *ped all those women, I will give them a nice little torture before killing them. Kai said in a cold voice and snapped his fingers. The two subordinates' bodies resurrected. Their eyes suddenly started burning and they screamed at the top of their lungs. Their bodies once combusted and they died again. Shockingly, they resurrected once again and the same thing happened again. This kept on happening as they died and resurrected again. The leader was so afraid that he was trembling, but he still thought that his weapon might be enough to kill Kai. The leader gulped and raised his own sword. The two figures leaped towards each other and exchanged a strike. The sound of metal hitting against metal resounded through the entire hideout. Kai and the leader continued to exchange blows and sparks flew after each clash. Kai was simply playing with him and was enjoying this. He had already found about 101 weak spots in the leader's attacking pattern and thought that it was about time he finished this. He pierced the leader's heart and he fell on the ground with a huge thump. Kai yawned and flexed his body before snapping his fingers. The leader's eyes suddenly flew open and they were full of fear. Did you really think that I will just let you die in peace? Now, I will first ask you for information and you will tell me everything I want to hear. Or otherwise, you will experience something beyond you. Kai stopped mid-sentence as a foul smell entered his nose. He pinched his nostrils and stared at the leader. Surprisingly, the leader had become so terrified that he had pooped his pants. Now that was quite nasty. Kai facepalmed and the leader told him everything about their little group of bandits and how they managed to perfectly capture every cultivator that came their way. He was surprised by some of the information but decided that he would think about it later. For now, a private session will begin. But since it would go on for a long time, Kai would display an ad for everyone. Are you bored and frustrated? Are you full of stress? Do you want something that will help you relieve these feelings? Then, I have the perfect product for you. Meet the perfect stress relievers. Bad guys freshly caught by me, Kai, and I will sell them to you and you can do anything to them. You can torture them, dress them as a Barbie, make them dance on the street while wearing panties, and anything else you want. If you want one, then call 100.kais.godly services, hotline for delivery of one. The first 100 customers can get customized stress relievers with free gifts. ENV no refunds. See ya. Kai tortured the guy for almost a full hour. First, he started severing all of his limbs from the bottom of his feet, cutting them into leaf-like thickness, which is practically very thin. After doing that, he put the leader back and cut his little brother before his eyes, and stuffed it into the leader's face. At the same time, he had divided the leader's consciousness into two parts and one of them was physically present with Kai. Whereas the other one was being tortured mentally. Kai did many more horrifying things that you don't want to hear and he then simply snapped his fingers and the leader's body, along with his two subordinates who were being resurrected and killed again and again, vanished. He then went back to his new cheerleading squad. Everyone there had an expression of satisfaction on their faces. He had not put up a soundproof barrier while his torturing session, so everyone was able to hear the leader's scream and cries of pain and agony. Kai had found out many surprising news from the leader and was now about to see whether they were true or not. But first, he had to tend to his cheerleading squad. Chapter 27 Do I Need to Create a Fake Assassination? Chapter Preview. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Be nov calm, do you all want new identities? Kai asked the group of 35 women. All of them nodded their heads with enthusiasm. Kai then snapped his fingers and all of them fell asleep. The color of their hair and eyes started changing. When they opened their eyes, all of them looked entirely different. Since you don't want to start a new life, all of you can stay here peacefully. I will clean up this place after I complete my mission and then you guys will maintain this place. You can eat anything you want and drink the most expensive drinks if you want to. You can wear anything you like and even start your cultivation once again. Kai said and every woman had a new light in their eyes. The truth was, he had to get a stamp on his mission paper to prove that he had completed the mission. The stamp was in the possession of the one who requested the mission. In this case, the city lord of Ryazu's city had the stamp. Kai started drawing some symbols on the air and in 10 seconds, he had managed to draw 10,000 symbols. A moment later, a formation lit up. Normally, he was just required to snap his fingers and whatever he wanted was done. But this formation was way too complex for a finger snap and he had to make it with precision. However, if anyone heard that Kai whipped up such a complex formation in just 10 seconds, they might choke themselves to death. Since he was not a god anymore, he couldn't create things from thin air. So, he had created a teleportation formation that will teleport anything you wish for. The stuff would of course be taken from somewhere else. Now some people might say that this was stealing or something along this line. However, Kai didn't care about them. If anyone had a problem, then they can complain to him. He would of course turn them into ash for doing such a thing. But since these women didn't know about it, Kai didn't think that anyone else would. He bid his farewell to them and left the hideout. As soon as he went away, the women gathered together and went near the formation. One of them willed for cheap cooked meat and it appeared right in front of her. All of them were quite happy and soon ordered their own cheap food. They ate until they were full and happy and finally went back to sleep, thinking about Kai in their dreams. Kai had found out that the city lord was in cahoots with the bandits. The guy who he had met at the reception warned the bandits that someone was coming and they would set up traps and lookouts beforehand. That was how they managed to capture every single cultivator that ever came their way. Unfortunately for them, Kai was someone who even managed to escape from the most powerful men in the universe. Even though it included his entire harem getting killed and him using his most powerful techniques, it still had to count for something. Anyways, it turned out that the city lord himself came to the hideout to enjoy himself with the women. Kai was no preacher of justice but he still felt annoyed by this. Now the problem was how would he do this? Do I need to create a fake assassination? In this way, I can easily kill him and say that someone assassinated him. In this way, Kai can avoid extra drama in his life and could still do some justice to those women. He instantly teleported to the city hall in Ryazu City. To prove that he had completed the mission, he had to bring the heads of the bandits' leader and his subordinates. Kai went to the guy who gave him a fake warning and presented the heads to him. The guy formed a foul expression and asked Kai to follow him. They went to the city lord's room where 6 guards were standing in attention. They entered the room and the guy did a bow to the city lord who turned out to be a man in his 40s with sour blonde hair and dead fish black eyes. You are now about to die. Both the city lord and the dude released their 6th stage and 3rd stage hell spirit realm cultivation respectively. They thought that after hearing their voice, the guards outside would come running in and they would easily capture Kai and mark him as an assassin. Unfortunately, Kai was very much of a real assassin. Kai laughed like a maniac and a tear rolled down his cheek. I have enforced this room with a rank 5 soundproof barrier and the guards outside are hypnotized by me. Now, what will you do? He asked in a mocking voice. The city lord and his subordinate didn't want to believe this but there was no other explanation for the guards not coming in here. They were also shocked that someone as young as Kai could create rank 5 barriers. Rank 1 formations can be created by Een/Yang Gathering Realm cultivators. Similarly, rank 5 formations can only be created by Heaven Spirit Realm cultivators. You are lying. The city lord said, however, his body was trembling. Kai simply laughed and released his full cultivation. Both the men fell on their butts and stared at Kai in terror. NNN 9th S. Stage H. Heaven Spirit Realm. The city lord's voice shook with fear. The other guy took a chance and tried to pierce Kia with a dagger. Surprisingly, Kai let him. But instead of red blood, golden blood dropped out of Kai's body. Who are you? The city lord regained his voice for a moment. Oh, you saw my ichor. Well, since you are gonna die, I might as well tell you. I am a god who is quite pissed at you. Kai said and snapped his fingers. Both the guy and the city lord suddenly pressed their hands against their abdomens. Blood started to flow out of it and it continued to flow in rivers. Within a minute, their lifeless bodies fell on the ground and a huge stab wound was visible on their abdomens. Kai snapped his fingers once again and the wall in the city lord's room broke and the guards entered the room at the same time. Assassin. He stabbed them both and also stabbed me. He only wanted to kill those two and left me with a major wound. Kai muttered weakly and the guards believed him. Many people knew about the city lord and his deeds but couldn't do anything as the city lord was too powerful. They thought that he might have helped in the kidnapping of some powerful daughter of some family and they sent an assassin after him. One guard gave Kai a healing pill and another stamped his mission paper. He left the city hall and tossed the pill inside his pendant. His wound was only for show as it had already healed. He had already used a rank 5 illusion formation on the band. No, his hideout. Everyone would see a building burn to the ground and if they tried to enter it, they would be repelled and their memories would be wiped. It was now time to return to his hideout. No, he should call it a stronghold. Kai would now concoct the true mind pill. Chapter 28 Was That a Rat? Chapter Preview. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Kai appeared in one of the many rooms available in his stronghold. He had already seen that everyone else was asleep. He didn't want to wake them up as they might be having a good sleep after a long time. He simply went from one room to another and cleaned them with the snap of his fingers. If any of his male friends saw him facing this much drama, then they will surely choke from laughter. Even though Kai preferred the company of women, he still had some great male friends. Even though they always made fun of him, he still liked them. He went into a room and brought out a full set of alchemy gear out of his pendant. The gear included a huge table, for keeping the ingredients and cauldron, a top-grade alchemy cauldron, and a stand for it. Kai put the cauldron on the stand and focused. Black flames started to dance around his hands and he touched the cauldron. These were alchemy flames. For someone to become an alchemist, a fire element is absolutely necessary for them. Alchemy flames were used to maintain the temperature of the cauldron for melting various ingredients and mixing them to create a pill. So if you don't have a fire element, then you cannot become an alchemist. Furthermore, alchemy flames differed from normal flames used for fighting and other stuff. Some cultivators even had special flames like blue flames or purple flames whereas most of the alchemists had normal orange-red flames. Now, some people might ask that do these flames affect one's cultivation? The answer was no. These flames only improved alchemy talents and did not affect someone's cultivation. Kai took out the ingredients required for the true mind pills and started concocting it while he thought of the various questions that had appeared in his mind when he had first heard of alchemy flames. The Kai from millenniums ago had thought that whether there was anything that boosted one's cultivation. Now he knew the answer to it. People beloved by the spiritual energy had such bodies known as spiritual bodies. Spiritual bodies were of two types. One from the spiritual energy gathered from the surroundings that increased one's cultivation speed by many folds. And the second from element spirits that controlled the elements of a world. Kai had met the bosses of the element spirits and had kidnapped them. This incident had made him the most wanted criminal in about every world. But that was another story and he also had a very good reason for doing that. If Kai cultivated with women having spiritual bodies then that would be 10 times more effective than his normal cultivation. It took him an hour to create just one single pill and he was feeling a little light-headed after creating it. In reality, the true mind pill was one of the most difficult pills to make in the history of alchemy. This was because it used your own mental energy to create something to stable someone else's mentality. The quality of this pill depended on the strength of the creator. Even in his previous life, he could only create a single pill in a day and that was when he was an immortal. Now, he could only create one pill in a year. The reason for this was that the true mind pill drains the creator's mental energy and if you try to make more pills than your capability, your mind will get destroyed by it. Kai took out a perfectly white pill from inside the cauldron and tossed it inside his pendant. He was about to leave when suddenly, something dropped on the floor. He quickly turned around to see that a pan was lying on the ground. As for how it came here, who knows? Was that a rat? He pondered when a clattering sound started resounding in this hall, followed by the sound of squeaking. I know one thing, that is not a normal rat. Kai said and ran towards the place where the noise came from. While running, he suddenly realized he could teleport to the place and facepalmed. He then teleported to the room and ran face smack into a huge rat's ass. Disgusting! Kai shouted and backed up. The rat was about 9 feet long and 16 feet wide and almost covered the entire room. Its teeth were as long as a huge longsword and the rat started making snapping motions with them. What are you, a rat who ate too much and became a lousy fat bastard like you? Kai taunted the mouse before snapping his fingers to kill it. The rat had come through a hole in the ground and he could hear more rats coming from under there. Oh come on! Why the hell did they build a stronghold above a rat's nest? Kai said and extended his hand into the hole. The tip of his fingers illuminated with black fire and he released the flame with a flick of his fingers. The fire spread throughout the nest and wiped out every single rat. Kai stood up and brushed the dust off his clothes. He looked at his cheerleading squad for the last time and teleported back to the sect. Running smack into a rat's ass had not been a good experience for him. Kai teleported himself directly to the mission hall and submitted the mission. The elder there looked at him with surprise and asked for his sect token as Kai had chosen the reward in the form of sect points. After the mission hall, he was about to go cultivate with Mia when suddenly, he ran smack into something soft. It's quite soft and squishy. Bigger than .my hands huh? That's a good way for a breasts to be. Wait. Breasts. Kai said as he groped at whatever he was holding. He instantly recognized that voice as Riang stared at him with cold eyes. Great, just what he wanted. Chapter 29 I have to defeat the entire inner court. Chapter preview. You are listening at novelfull.audio. You. Riang started saying and her voice trailed off. She was about to call him a pervert when she suddenly remembered that they were both members of a dual cultivation sect, so they were both technically perverts. You what? Can you please complete your sentence as I have to go back to my house to do some important things? Kai said in an annoyed tone. But in reality, he was more tired than he could have imagined. He was trying hard to stay focused as he felt his mind swirling with different thoughts. Forget about that. You are going to take the core disciple exam right now without any whining. Riang said and started dragging him along with her. Now, he could have easily teleported back to his house, but right now, his intelligence was lowered by about 80%. He let Riang drag him towards the big exam hall without any problems. The hall was empty and Riang dropped him there and went to fetch others. Kai simply stood there like an idiot and stared at the sun. If the original Kai saw himself doing such things, he would die from embarrassment. Riang went to Junjun and told him that Kai was ready to take the exam. Junjun nodded and went to the outer court and Riang went to the inner court. A disciple is about to take the test to become a core disciple. Everybody follow me to the exam hall. Junjun used sound projection to amplify his voice as it resounded in the entire outer court. As the name tells, sound projection amplifies your voice by 10 times. A moment later, the outer court was full of outer court disciples and they started following Junjun to the exam hall. Similar things were happening in the inner court. Riang was leading the inner court disciples to the exam hall and she dropped them there. All the outer court disciples and the inner court disciples surround Kai and stared at him. The sect masters then went to the central court where the core disciples resided. The core disciples were always busy in cultivation, so the sect masters had to personally go and ask them to come to the exam hall. After collecting the core disciples, the sect masters returned to the exam hall with them. The sect masters took out 2 keys from their robes and plunged them into the ground. The keys started glowing and were absorbed by the ground. A moment later, a huge stadium emerged around every single person present there. The stadium was a dome-shaped stadium with a central stage and stands for people to sit. The sect masters directed everyone to the stands went to the stage, where Kai was standing alone. When everyone settled down, the disciples started talking in whispers and many pointed at him. Silence. Quiet. Both the sect masters used sound projection and shouted at the same time. The entire stadium was now quiet. We are here today to see Kai, an inner court disciple, undergo the test to become a core disciple. Riang said. But didn't he become an inner court disciple about a week ago? Someone in the crowd said. Yeah, he is right. I didn't even see him while he was an outer court disciple. Someone else said. Soon, the entire stadium was full of complaining people and the sect masters had to silence them once more. Yes, we know that. But Kai here had so much potential that we have decided that he should definitely be a core disciple. Kai, please show them your cultivation. Riang said and gestured towards Kai. Kai simply released a first-stage Hell Spirit Realm cultivation and the entire stadium plunged into complete silence. Now as I was saying, he will now undergo the core disciple exam. Usually, we have 10 other participants compete for it and the one who is taking the exam has to defeat them all. If the person undergoing the exam dies, then the one who killed him or her would become a core disciple. Riang explained the rules and the core disciples nodded. The outer court disciples were sitting at the very back of the stadium, the inner court disciples were sitting in the middle and front whereas the core disciples were sitting in the first row. Riang then formed a sinister expression and looked at Kai with an evil smile. But since Kai is so strong, I will allow every single inner court disciple who wants to challenge him to come here and participate in this test. As soon as Riang finished her sentence, the stadium once again erupted with talking. Even Junjun had a shocked expression on his face and he looked at Riang in disbelief. At first, Riang had thought about letting 20 inner court disciples challenge Kai. But after Kai had embarrassed her, Riang thought that this was the perfect time for her revenge. But her plan backfired when she saw about 800 male disciples standing up and coming towards Kai. We will fight him. One of them said and the others nodded. What would happen if he is killed? We have to stop it now. Junjun said to Riang, but before they could do anything, Kai spoke up. I have to defeat the entire inner court. Kai said. No shouted, for the first time. Why does he look like he is drunk? One of them said. The others also looked at Kai closely and saw that his knees were shaking a little. This is the perfect time for killing him. One of them said and he charged at Kai. In reality, everyone Kai had healed or massaged had spread the rumor that he could please anyone by just touching their skin. Every female in the inner court was charmed by this and refused to cultivate with any male inner court disciple. This led to them becoming mortal enemies of Kai. Kai was feeling a little dizzy and spun awkwardly to dodge the attack. The disciple went by his right while missing Kai's skin by a hair. The others saw this and also charged at him. He was spinning around in a dizzy sort of way which confused everyone. That's the legendary drunken fist. One of them suddenly said. If Kai had heard that when he was still normal, he would have laughed rivers of tears. Him using the drunken fist. It was impossible to get him drunk, no matter how much alcohol he drank. His current state was a result of his mental energy being drained. Well, it's time to kill you guys. Kai suddenly said and took out a sword from his pendant. But as soon as he touched the sword, he dropped it. Everyone stared at him, dumbfounded. Kai was killing people with swords a couple of days ago and now, he wasn't able to hold a sword. Oh, the irony of it. Chapter 30 Are you even dragons or just some extremely large lizards? Chapter preview, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Kai swooned dramatically and picked up his sword. He then stared at the ground and plunged the sword into it. Elemental spirit of earth, please help me as I am exhausted. Kai chanted. Was that a chant? One of the confused inner court disciples asked. Suddenly, the entire ground started to shake and cracks started to appear in the ground. A deafening roar was heard and a huge dragon came out of the cracks. The dragon was a Western dragon and its entire body was made up of earth. Instead of eyes, the dragon had glowing yellow balls in his eye sockets. But there was one huge problem, the dragon didn't have any wings. Yup, you heard it right, the dragon had no wings. Its back was completely flat, so either it was a defective dragon or it was just an overgrown lizard. What the hell happened to your wings? Kai bellowed. The dragon tilted his head towards Kai and a single hiss escaped from his throat. What? It's my fault you don't have wings. And you don't even have enough power to kill them all. Ah, you are useless. Let me call a second dragon. Kai rubbed his forehead and took out another sword. But this time, he tossed the sword in the air and started chanting. Elemental spirit of wind, please help me as this stupid dragon is not enough to kill my enemies. Suddenly, the wind started to blow at an incredibly fast pace and a tornado started building up. Another deafening roar was heard and another dragon made its appearance. This dragon was an Eastern dragon, but this time, the dragon had no skin and only its bones formed its body. Oh frigging, come on. Are you even dragons or just some extremely large lizard? One dragon doesn't have wings and the other one doesn't have skin. Great, just great. Kai, once again, started massaging his forehead. Both the dragons looked at him as if this was his fault, which, of course, was his fault. What are you waiting for? Just kill them. Kai gestured his hand towards the group of inner court disciples, who were trembling with fear. The dragons looked at each other and released two deafening roars, which some might interpret as a thirst for blood. But in reality, the real conversation was something like this. Earth Dragon. I bet that I can kill more people than you can. Wind Dragon. Oh yeah, whoever loses has to give the winner a massage. Doviko Earth Dragon. Let the challenge begin. And with that, both the dragons started slaughtering people. The Earth Dragon raised some earth golems to help him and killed people with his huge tail and claws while he stomped his feet on the ground and cracks ran through the ground and swallowed up disciples. Whereas the Wind Dragon created tornadoes to kill the disciples. Cries of fear echoed throughout the stadium as the inner court disciples tried to avoid the attacks of the dragons. But Kai had already created a barrier around him and the disciples, so they couldn't run. The rest of the sect watched this with eyes full of terror. After 5 minutes, the entire stage was full of bodies, and rivers of blood were flowing everywhere. The dragons roared once more and everyone thought that they wanted more blood. They were completely wrong. Earth Dragon. Ha ha ha. I killed 401 cultivators whereas you killed 399. I won. Air Dragon. That's only because you cheated by using those golems. Earth Dragon. A victory is a victory. Now give me my massage. The Air Dragon wanted to cry but no tears came as he was only a huge bone dragon. The Air Dragon wrapped himself around the Earth Dragon and started pressing his body against the Earth Dragon's skin. What the hell are you both doing? Roar. You are giving him a frigging massage. Oh, just disappear. Kai snapped his fingers and both the dragons disappeared. Now, listen to me carefully. I am going to lock myself up in my room and I will be under closed cultivation. If anyone tries to disturb me then you will die. And I am not going to kill you, a formation will do that for me. Do you understand? Kai gazed at everyone in the audience. Every single member of the sect, including the sect masters and elders, nodded their heads with enthusiasm. By the way, here take this pouch as compensation for all those lives I took. Kai said after a minute said and tossed a storage ring towards Riang. That ring contains 1,000,000 spirit stones. Use it carefully. Sayonara. He added and snapped his fingers. Everyone present there entered a trance-like state, and Kai wiped their memories about him summoning those dragons and the memories about his cultivation base. This would help him in being hidden and would, thus, remove some extra drama from his life. He snapped his fingers once again and everyone broke out of their trance-like state. He then teleported himself back to his room. Does that ring really contains 1,000,000 spirit stones? Junjun asked in disbelief, as soon as Kai vanished. Riang checked the contents of the ring and dropped it. She picked it up with a trembling hand and looked at Riang in shock. It contains 1.5 million spirit stones. She finally said, and the entire stadium plunged into silence. Kai teleported back to his room and he felt that he was going into slumber. But he was afraid of it. So, instead, he transferred his consciousness inside a special formation he had created and let his body slump into unconsciousness. He would be able to get back inside his body when his mental energy would be recovered. Kai's consciousness started cultivating and time passed. After some time, according to him, only some time had passed. His consciousness returned to his body and he woke up. Well, that at least confirms who the elemental spirits in this world are. Kai muttered to himself. Every world had different types of elemental spirits, some were the same, and some were different. A world might have 5 dragons as their elemental spirits or 4 lifelike reincarnations as elemental spirits. The elemental spirits could be anything. But the mortal cultivation world's elemental spirits included. Starting from the continent on the top, the black turtle of north, the white tiger of west, the vermilion bird of south, the azure dragon of east, and the yellow dragon of center. Kai had summoned the azure and yellow dragons. Well, I guess I should go and fulfill my promise with Mia, Nezuko, and the others. Kai cast out any thoughts about anything else and left his room. But little did he know, that his assumption that little time had passed, was wrong.